to order at 6:01. Hi, Josh.
Hello.
Okay, any public comments? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to the minutes of May 27th. And I know Carlton has some amendments that Josh is going to put up on the screen.
Yep, you just
Gina, I was going to suggest that we could defer that because they're pretty extensive. I was going to suggest that we defer it to the next meeting, but just distribute them to the committee, and then they will have a chance to review them, and then we could vote them next meeting if that's. It's up to you guys in the committee.
That's fine with me, because I know we do have a bunch of stuff here, and we do want to get to Jennifer Brooks' thing.
Do you need a motion for that?
No, I don't think so.
All right.
I think we'll just defer it. Okay. Does anybody have any problems with deferring approval of those minutes?
No.
no.
Okay, hearing. Okay.
So all I would ask is that Josh distribute that markup. It's a PDF document that it has comments in it, since I can't edit PDF on my computer. But if Josh could do that, it would be great.
Yep,
Okay,
I
Josh.
picked out the originals, and I'm just gonna bring everything up so that it can be compared to. But I'll also distribute the edits that you made.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. Okay, next thing, financial update. I had an email from Laurie. She and I communicate on the updates. They're in the process of catching up on things, closing out the end of the fiscal year. The report that we had last month, and I apologize, I didn't pull my copy to give the, I can look it up though. The only thing that has changed, other than some revenue that's come in, and they are in the process of updating that. The only thing that has changed is the $20,000 payment to the Old Bridgewater Historic Society. Other than that, I think we had, Tony, are you still here? Tony?
It is on, but he's muted.
Yeah, but he should be able to hear.
Yes, I am.
Okay, can you just update us on, I know Laurie was in the process, she said everything was being updated. Just, a little heads up on, is tax money revenue coming in steady? Or
Yeah,
I'll
give that. We are seeing a little bit of a slowdown, but nothing substantial for the entire year. So nothing should jeopardize your final balances. Revenue will exceed expenditures, and you'll have a plus to the bottom line. We just finished posting all the May stuff and reconciling May's cash. And so you'll be getting a report from Laurie with revenues through May.
Okay, short. Great. Thank you so much. Anybody have questions for Tony? Okay, here and now. Thank you, Tony. And thank you for coming to our meeting.
Welcome.
Yep. Can I just ask, speaking of people coming to the meetings, we note on the minutes, like guests that are attending, members here, if you have a name that shows up that doesn't show up like your name and we can't tell, like we have an iPhone and Indian neck. Can you guys just put, or gals, whoever, just put into the chat who the name is, like who it belongs to, so we can just record a guest or a member. Okay.
Is the Williams iPhone Bill?
That's Bill Smith. It should
Smith.
be.
Okay.
Yeah, let me just look at that. Yep, that was his number, because I worked with him yesterday for Zoom. Okay. So that was our update, that really nothing's changed except for income, and we will be getting the updated report for that. Okay. Can I ask that we? No. Okay, it's not, because it's in that order. the next process update, just some background. Carlton and Anna and myself spoke with Jennifer Burke last week at length about the process. She had sent us out what the process was that she had written up. We discussed it. Carlton has made some suggestions. We all made some suggestions on it. So that's in the process to update. Carlton or Jennifer or Anna, anything to add?
I could just add that I have received Carlton's red line version of the document, and I did take notes during our conversation. I hope to, combine those and come up with a new document for you by your next meeting, so that you'll have something for the entire committee to review by the next meeting.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much, and thank you for the time you're putting into it.
No problem.
Okay, Anna, do you have anything to add for that?
Nope, I think Jennifer said it all.
Okay, sounds good. Boy, we are moving like right along. I don't think we're going to be here for 3 or 4 hours like usual, which isn't a bad thing. Okay, Anna, the next one, discussion for consultant work. Just a background of that. Anna and Jen Golson have been working for putting together a plan on what we want them to concentrate on in the next year of their contract with us. So I'm going to, well, I was going to say pass the floor to Anna, but pass the screen, whatever we pass to her in virtual meetings. So.
Josh, can you make me a co-host so I can share my screen? I was just going to share the document.
Yep, you should be all set.
Okay, great. We sent this last month, but then in the interest of not having everyone there for 4 hours or all night, we decided to postpone this to you today. So I don't know if everyone had a chance to look at this or revisit it before the night. Can everyone see the PDF?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So as Gina mentioned, we just wanted to, now that the plan is done, the CPA plan, we wanted to kind of shift and get kind of your sense and what guidance from the CPC on what kind of on other projects you want us working on kind of behind the scenes. And all of this would be in addition to, coming to the CPC meetings and additional meetings outside of to support the CPC in reviewing applications and other kind of administrative and technical things that come up as needed in the meeting. So these are kind of just ideas that came up that we've been talking about over the last year. And we divided them into these 3 kind of categories around administration, marketing / soliciting projects, and then this last on shepherding new and like trying new community-led projects. So really trying to work with the community in kind of leading maybe someone who's unfamiliar with the application process through it and hopefully having a successful project through it. So if people have questions about specific ones, I don't know if people had kind of initial thoughts on this, or I can kind of talk through each item in some of these are pretty clear in terms of like an application materials update. I think we kind of know what that would look like. But some of these others might be maybe a little less clear. So I don't know if people are sort of interested in specific things and they want me to talk a little bit more about them or kind of grab people as they go. And all of these, as we go through them, we can I'd like to kind of ideally walk away with maybe a list of like 3 things or 3 to 5 things that we can kind of prioritize over the next year. As we check them off, we can move on to other things. And also this would be in addition to these ongoing technical support every month. So some of that would change.
Can I just interrupt for 1 second? Because I just have a question. This is the first time seeing this, and I just want to make sure that the items that we're asking Golson to work on are covered under their existing contract with the town. There's an existing contract that identifies a scope of services, and I just want to make sure that we're not stepping outside those boundaries. So if it's possible, if I can get I haven't really looked at this yet, an opportunity to look at this and compare it with your existing contract and scope of services so that I can make sure that we're not, you know, asking you to do something that's outside of that boundary.
Sure. Yeah, we sent this back in April to everyone, so it's possible that maybe things just got missed up, but I'm happy to resend this to you as well.
Yeah, I don't remember seeing it, but yeah, if you could resend it to me, that would be great.
Jennifer makes a good point, but I'm assuming that you and your Jennifer, the other Jennifer, have reviewed that and it's in scope. But I agree that we need to have a very clear understanding of that it's all in scope.
So I guess the question is, if Jennifer Burke wants to look at this, does the CPC want to table this conversation until next month?
I would say possibly, but if we can just take a few minutes for you to go through now and the ones that aren't self-explanatory, if you want to just give a little more background to it, and it also might help Jennifer when she reviews it.
Yeah, are there specific ones that jump out to you, Gina?
Let me look. I make it bigger and I let go and it shrinks back again.
Or to
Okay.
other members of the CPC that want me to kind of chime in on them?
Okay, no, I think they are basically self-explanatory. Some of the things, like one that just really hit me was a walking tour CPA funded sites. I think that's a great idea.
Right, I mean, some of this would be dependent on the health crisis situation and how that,
right.
So like, for example, like working with potential project applicants, either one-on-one or in a group, that could be virtual right now, or could become in person depending on how the situation sort of evolves with COVID. And same with the walking tour. We would probably only want to do that if the sort of health situation permits that.
Right.
Or if we could do that immediately in some way.
Okay. So I guess we can just defer it until Jennifer reviews it and we can go over it more.
Well, I think it's very clear that administratively, the application materials update, we should be working on that because there are some things that need to be addressed. And part of that will be part of the process update that we're dealing with. I'm not sure help in reforming or revitalizing the Bridgewater Housing Trust is in our purview. So that, I think that may need Jennifer's attention closely. Beyond that, I think the walking tours are probably pretty decent because I know the Open Space Committee has been doing that under COVID. They've been looking at different open space parks and that kind of thing, and we have funded like Styles and Hart, for example. And I don't know what we may see down the road from the town with regard to accessibility for Styles and Hart or other parks. So I think it's a good thing to have that observation. And then so I'll use this opportunity because it may be something you need to follow. I know that, and this may be answered by the finance director or Jennifer. The fire station project, I was under the understanding that it may be on hold, but they were moving forward. And part of that process, I had been, as a CPC member, I had been in communication with a member of that committee and suggested that if they would use a parcel that's by the power lines out on 104, that we may be able to, and he suggested that we could do recreation, a playground there, and also I saw that we could potentially do access to the Murray Needs farm from the backside. And so I wasn't sure if that was going to go forward or not, but that's the kind of thing I think we'll need help from Anna, and walking tours would be good.
Good points. Thank you.
Jean or Harry or Bill, any thoughts? Yeah, Jean.
We could do a walking tour with 6-foot sticks and face masks.
And hula hoops.
No, that property, Carlton, is one that I mentioned. That's where the fire station should go.
Yeah, I just don't know what the review process is, what they're finding. I think you get 3 birds with 1 stone if you go there, but that's up to that committee. I don't know if Jennifer has any information on it.
I can tell you that the committee has, I believe, chosen a consultant to work on the feasibility study, but we're waiting, I believe, for the budget to be passed last night by the town council before the town manager was going to execute a contract with him, with that company. And then once that gets done, then he's going to begin his work and provide some suggested sites for the new fire station. So there is a consultant chosen. He has not begun that work yet.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you. Any other comments on the
Jennifer,
plan?
one more. Jennifer, since we're on this topic, do you have any idea of what the town's schedule might be for actually getting the accessibility of Stiles and Hart in play?
You mean as far as like walking trails and?
No, the money was to provide a parking area and accessibility.
No, the
Access.
money that the CPC gave last year was to purchase the land.
Correct,
Right.
but the purchase and intent from, Harry, you can talk a bit more about it since you're the steward.
Well, we have it. So the idea was with the next round of grant funding from the state, we were going to apply for additional funding for parking and access and trails. I believe the town manager is looking at that right now, but because we're having closing on that property this week, so
Great.
if we actually own that property, we can't really apply for any additional funding. So
Okay,
That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Yep, that's good. Thank you. It's good to note that it's passing papers this week. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, so Josh, you'll just ship this off to Jennifer for her to review.
Document?
Yep, and we'll get back to discussing it in July.
Yeah.
I know Jennifer has another meeting to go to, and I thank her for coming on for hours for a bit. So can I entertain a motion to move the housing trust from old business up to now, so we can just get Jennifer's input on that?
Move.
Second.
Okay, that was Carlton and Jean. Roll call vote. Josh?
Gina?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
Carlton?
Yo.
Harry?
Yes.
Okay, Bill?
Is Bill
Bill.
still here? Oh, yep, I see him right there. Let me try to unmute him here.
Okay, Bill,
Yes.
Bill, can you hear us? Yep,
Oh, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep. we can now.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, Jennifer, can you just give us an update on the housing trust? I know you did a couple last month, a little. On what, like when it's going to be reinstituted, if you know, or?
well, I think I don't know that anything has changed until there is money to be put into the trust. I'm not sure that there's any real need for it to exist, because there's nothing for it to do if it has no money to do anything. You know, as of right now, I don't know that there's any anticipation of putting any money in there and moving forward. So, but if you guys are putting money in there, then that's a different conversation. But as of right now, the update we gave at the last meeting, I believe, is still the same. Is that, I mean, there's 2 or 3 members and they just sit idle until there are monies available.
Okay, refresh my brain. Is McElwain School, is any of that coming out of Housing Trust?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so, but I couldn't remember for sure. Okay, any questions or comments for Jennifer on the Housing Trust? Carlton?
No, the housing trust, I'm just curious as to what the town thinks, if they're actually going to ever actualize it. It's dependent on money, you know, I just know what's going forward. So it's just
Okay.
an effort on hold.
Okay. And Jennifer, when you said putting money in, your CPC putting money into it or the town putting money?
I don't know that the town is going to put money into it, but if the CPC were to designate some of their housing funds into the trust, you know, that would be a funding source. If there were,
Okay.
you know, mitigation, you know, impact fees from a developer, that could be a funding source. So, but as of right now, we don't have any of those funding sources.
Okay.
Is looking at that kind of thing something that we can ask Anna to look into housing options and provide the town with that kind of thing? I'm just trying to figure out, we don't have a good handle on what we can and can't do or shouldn't do. Would that be helpful to have some kind of synopsis of that?
I guess, are you asking me that question, or are you asking, who are you asking?
I'm sorry, I'm sitting here looking at you and I'm looking at you. Sorry, yes, I was asking you as well as Gina.
So I guess I would say, I'm not sure what you don't think we have a good handle on, because I mean, I'm pretty well versed in housing, so I'm pretty.
I don't think the committee has a strong, I certainly don't have a strong sense of the do's and don'ts and what we could propose, that kind of thing.
So if you would like so you want the committee to be educated on what their options are.
That's a great way to say it.
Yeah, I think that's great too, because to be honest, I'm not perfectly sure everything the Housing Trust could do. I know some, but I'm sure there's a heck of a lot that I don't know.
Yeah, I know Jen spoke about this briefly when Stuart was presented, and there was a discussion. I think that's part of what revived this conversation around the Housing Trust. But I mean, I think Jen would be happy to give a presentation on just like what a housing trust is at the CPC.
Well, she wrote it. She wrote the affordable housing thing. So, yeah. But I think Jennifer and Jennifer, however, but I would like to have a 2-pager, not pros necessarily, but do's and don'ts and possibilities.
Okay, good point. Jennifer, can we ask you just not that we're trying to give you more work, but just when you get a chance to, just a quick something on the Housing Trust, like Houghton said, do's and don'ts and ideas of what it could be used for.
I'm not just talking about the Housing Trust. I'm talking about affordable housing.
Yeah, I know what you mean, Carlton.
Thank you. I knew you did, but I wanted to make sure everybody.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
How you keep
Okay, anything
affordable?
What was that, Jean?
How you keep affordable housing affordable? Because isn't it
good point?
All
That's
we need?
Yeah,
good.
I look at what they call affordable housing, and in my mind, it's not affordable. But I guess compared to the whole world, that it is affordable compared to what everything's selling for, right, and what rents are too. I mean, the house next door to me, they call it a 4-room apartment upstairs. 1 room is, I don't know, you could feel like you'd be lucky to fit a twin bed in there. And they wanted $1,000 a month for rent, which I guess is low compared to what's around here. But to me, I was like, oh my God, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But, okay, any other questions for Jennifer? For the Housing Trust or affordable housing? Where do we stand, Jennifer? Do you know for the affordable housing for the, like we have to have I apologize, I have my windows open and I live close to the train tracks. As soon as I finish my question, I'll mute. But where we stand for a percentage of affordable housing?
Yeah, we're at 11.25, I believe it is, but we're over 11%.
Okay, and what is the recommended that we're supposed to have?
10%.
Oh, okay, so we're over our limit.
Yep.
Okay, and the train's past the station here, so I don't need to mute. Okay, I apologize for that. I love the windows open, but the train gets loud sometimes. Okay, if we have nothing else for Jennifer, that's good. We're not kicking you off, Jennifer. You can stay on.
Believe me, I probably would rather stay here than where I'm about to go, so.
Well, that's true. That's true. I don't blame you. Okay.
All right, thank you,
CPC
everybody.
All
Oh,
right,
thank
see
you.
next
Thank
week.
you so much, Jennifer. CPC representative update. Okay, that's the section we just report what our committees are doing that we're appointed from to CPC, like recreation or Jean's. Okay.
Planning board,
Yes, my mind went blank. I'll start Park and Rec. I'll give an update on the fencing, but basically nothing's changed. We're waiting to see. There are a number of things that need to be done. As you know, Park and Rec budget is probably one of the smallest in town. So we rely on capital expenses to fund a lot. That's been cut, as I said last month, that's been cut a lot. While they're deciding on the budget, Park and Rec is holding off putting in any applications they may put in for CPA funds until they see what's approved first by capital planning. So that hasn't changed at all.
So what might those projects be? Can you just give us a quick ticket?
I'm trying to think. At one point, I'm not positive if this was done, but it was like I think lighting at the golf course, the parking lot. There were some things for the golf course to put in for. Off the top of my head, I can't remember a lot.
Maybe we can do
have,
that next meeting.
Yep, I'm just looking if we still have Tony here because he would know what was. No,
He was.
I was gonna say he would know what was on the capital planning, but capital expenses. But I will report back for next month for actual things that might be coming to us.
Great.
And the council voted on the budget last night, and I was actually listening to another Zoom at the same time. I'm not sure, Carlton, did they approve any capital expense last night?
They approved the budget, and they approved the enterprise funds, and they approved our budget as we had revised and requested.
Right. Okay, good. I was going to mention that under business too. Thank you that it was approved. Okay, so hopefully we'll have more of an update for that. Any other CPC members want to report anything on their committees?
nothing exciting. Next week, we're doing the site plan for the, what is it? Whatever the school is.
Mhm.
I don't know what, I mean, I know it's not.
The Mitchells.
No, is
The
it
Mitchell school.
elementary? It might be.
But they're not expecting any funds to come from CPA, right? CPC?
Oh, I doubt it. No, I don't think, but
No.
they're coming to the planning board next week. And then we've also had a lot of discussion on the bylaw rewrite. What did they do last night at town?
They took it off the table.
Took it off the table after
No,
all.
they withdrew it, and you guys are going to see a lot more work. I don't know what the plan going forward. They didn't speak to that.
Right, but it was withdrawn.
The board
Okay.
citizens that have spent a lot of time going over that.
Mhm. Right, and your committee isn't one that I can't remember that ever asking for CPA funding.
No, no.
Okay, Steve isn't with us tonight.
I can update that a little bit.
Okay, I was gonna say, can somebody update for that?
Steve and I and the chair, David Moore, excuse me, the chair of the Historical Commission, sat in on a ad hoc committee this afternoon that's dealing with the memorial building and I guess finalizing the construction documents and that kind of thing. Bottom line is that from that is that we have requested that committee requested that we do some kind of walkthrough with the architects so that we can visualize what's exactly happening, because there's some question now. Remember, we recommended funding the two accessibility parts of the project. That's what we recommended funding. But there is some suggestion that we could potentially do something different on the interior of the building that would avoid having to put that accessibility sidewalk in to the entrance to the basement on the back of the building. So I'm not sure where that's going, but if they don't use the money for as designated, they'll probably have to come back to us for a revision. We'll see. So that's going forward, but it's more on the implementation side. And I got invited to sit on that committee because I'm a big mouth.
I would like to participate. I would like to participate in that tour, Carlton.
What we ask is, Bill, great. What we ask is that the chairs of any relevant committee be included in this process.
Right. HDC has to approve of all the changes.
Right.
And they've not met with us yet. They met preliminarily with me a year and a half ago, but not with the full committee. Sorry?
No, I'm interrupting you and I apologize.
No, I was saying we haven't had a formal meeting with a quorum to discuss the plans with the HDC.
I think that they're trying to get to that, and I'll leave it at that. But we've strongly urged that your committee members, if necessary, historical commission chairs, myself as a CPC representative, Steve Rogan, and a couple of others would be part of that, so we can do a clear walkthrough and visualize better what they're suggesting.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
One other comment from here. Do anybody have any idea of the pickleball court situation and whether or not we're going to be requested by this Elder Affairs to fund that?
Last I heard, and Rec didn't meet this month, and we need to get a meeting definitely. We meaning Park and Rec was having a hard time getting pavers in for the asphalt. It was just everybody, all the area towns, the state contract people were just completely backlogged. That went back to last year. Charlie does have it all leveled off, marked off. We're just waiting for the paving. I haven't been down that way for ages to check, but I will follow up with Charlie to see where that stands.
My question is the rec department, whoever, coming to the CPA for any funding?
The last I heard from Emily in the Council on Aging, it sounded like she was not going to come to CPA. But I think she had talked tentatively. We had talked about like what the possibilities of CPA could be for funding projects around the senior center. One of which that she seemed interested in potentially was around trails, accessible trails around the back area. But I don't think she's made any kind of progress in that. But I'm happy to reach out to her about that if you want me to.
Well, I think that's a tickler list that maybe you would track, because I think Joshua will show it in the minutes, but I think having you track that tickler list would be one of the two of you tracking the tickler list would be good.
Yeah, I'll check with Charlie. I know that money has been approved for a good part of the pickleball courts already approved through capital expenses. So a good portion of it is for that. Whether at the next point, it's being done by Park and Rec and not the senior center. So in my opinion, it wouldn't be Emily coming for CPA funds. It would be Park and Rec, because they're the ones that are actually installing them. It's not on, I don't think it's actually, or I guess it is senior center property, which is basically owned by the town. So it's town property, and Rec's putting the things on, Park and Rec. And as I said, I know capital expense has already approved a significant amount for that. It's just been carried over for more than a year because of the problems getting papers.
Has it been appropriated?
Yes.
Just approved?
Yep.
Appropriated.
I can't remember exactly how much though.
Yeah, I don't worry about that. It's just that it's been appropriated. I'm just trying to figure out what the list looks like over the next year.
Right. I'll get a list for the next meeting from Charlie of things that, like a wish list that, you know, he's putting for, obviously he'll try to use town money, capital money rather than CPA. But if something needs to be done, but capital's not funding it, then Park and Rec will come to the CPC for it. But he does try to use the town money first.
Well, it's all town money, but thanks.
Right, but like his capital money versus the CPA funds.
Jean had her hand up.
Okay, Jean?
Oh, God,
Thank
now
you.
I don't, oh, I know what. See, I better make a note. You said inside for handicap access possibly, which will be excellent, because I was thinking it would be lousy for, at the Memorial Building, if a handicap has to come outside the front and then go around to the back to go downstairs, not knowing what they necessarily would be.
Yeah, that's a lot of what has to happen, and there's a whole lot of variances that may need to be applied for. So
Yeah.
we're trying to help them get a final design.
Yeah,
If they-
and I mean, when you're renovating a historical building, but you have to do according to disability portions,
Right.
you can't, you know, it's not going to be historical and you can't do that, so it doesn't matter.
It has to go by the Architectural Review Board, and because of the restriction on the building, it has to go through Mass Historic, who has say over whether you can or cannot make minor changes or major changes to the building, either inside or outside. So there's a lot of hurdles to pass still.
But there wasn't disability back then that they used, but now there is, so.
Yeah, there's that back elevator, whatever, but that doesn't get you to the basement. So but anyway,
Yeah.
so that's a work in progress, but good points.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm. Now, isn't there a stairway inside the building that goes down to the basement?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there is.
Can't they put one of those motorized chairs?
That's an option. We've asked them to look at that option, but I'm told by other people that have dealt with this kind of thing that it may be required to be an elevator, and if it has to be an elevator, that does a lot of different stuff.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, you might have to, yeah, it might have to be big enough for a wheelchair.
Yeah. Well,
Actually, I'm told that any accessibility stuff, you have to have halls wide enough for 2 wheelchairs to pass in the night.
Mm-hmm.
okay. They have the elevator at St. Thomas Aquinas Church, if you want to call it an elevator. It serves its purpose, but when I would help my mother with the wheelchair with it, I don't think we might have been able to fit 2 wheelchairs, but it was enough just to get us up and down, and it wasn't, I guess it was called more of a lift than an elevator.
That's a good idea.
Lift.
Well, we'll be talking about it down the road with that committee.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. Any other committees? Bill, is your committee working on anything that you just want to fill us in on that might want CPC money?
Not to my knowledge, no. I'm not sure I'm even on a committee yet.
Well, you have to be on a committee to be on CPC.
Well, I mean, I'm obviously on Historic District Commission, but I'm not,
Right.
I don't think specifically I'm on a committee.
Oh, okay.
That is the commission you're on. That's your designated standing for this committee.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
but
good.
I'm not on one of your specialized committees.
Like a subcommittee.
Right.
Got it. Okay, good.
One more question.
Okay. Sure.
Anything, do you know anything about town hall? They would be one that would need money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the old town hall?
Yeah.
Correct.
If Steve were here, he would talk and say that they're going through a process with a consultant to develop potential uses there and et cetera. And if it gets into historic preservation of some kind, I don't know, they might come in, but they're still very early in that assessment phase. But you
Okay,
make a
good.
point. That's just another thing to have on the particular list of what may become down the road.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Good. Thank you, Carlton and Jean, for a good question. Okay, just quickly, updates. Fencing at Legion Field will be, I'm just looking back for Charlie's comment. Fencing is all done except for the small area by Cottage Street Playground, and that should be done in the next week or so, couple weeks. So that's the update on Legion Field fencing. Memorial Building, Anna prepared a letter. We sent it off to the town, Michael Dutton for the town council to vote on it. And it was just a letter summarizing the motion from last meeting. So that's gone. It's gone to the town council. And I'm sure it'll just pass there.
I thought they passed that last night, but I
thought so too. Like I said, I was going between two Zoom things.
I know they did, because one of the counselors asked whether or not the level of specification that we provided was actually allowed or correct or whatever. And
okay, good.
We know it is, and we're trying to change how we're doing business.
Mm-hmm. Good. In the town, I know Michael Dutton said at our last meeting that he thought the CPC was doing a good job. Okay, next we sent out is our congregational church application. Let me find, it's right here. Let me find where I put it. Okay, we sent it out the other night. There were some changes. The church folks very nicely highlighted for us, which at the start, which pages were changed. I was in contact with Jason Rollins, just, for his thought, and conferring with Carlton, and we decided that before we bring Jason back into it, and it kind of goes along with what he had said at the last meeting, that the CPC go through and see how our thoughts on how it meets up for that 3-point plan and the anti-aid. But we do have it. We will do that. I do have a couple of questions. If I can just start out on it for some of the church folks. You have in here, and I want to thank you for it. It was a very thorough updates. And the letter from your attorney was very good too. And at some point, we may ask Attorney Rollins to talk to the church attorney too. But you have a number of things here. I didn't add them up, and I think you do have them total that were already paid out, like to Gill Associates that you had paid $63,000, 63 plus change $1,000. Now, for work already done, that would be taken. We can't pay for work already done, correct? Carlton or Anna?
That is correct. That is correct.
Right. So we can't pay. So that would reduce the amount, things that you've already paid would reduce the amount that you're asking. So I just want to make that known to, I guess it's not really a question. It's just a comment for the congregational church folks. So what you've already paid out, and I understand that, yes, it did have to be paid, but that's not something that CPC we can't reimburse for, or something that's already paid. Okay, does CPC members or Anna have any questions or comments on the application so far?
Gina, I have taken it upon myself to conduct a draft analysis of the submission from the church, and I'm trying to review it. I haven't completed it, but I'm in the process of trying to look at the three standards that SJC put forward in their ruling, and trying to look at the application and see how the application comports with those. I know the church's law, and by the way, thank you for the update in the lawyer's letter. I think it's very helpful. And I'm in the process of trying to summarize what I personally think it may or may not fit those categories. When I get done with that, my intent is to distribute that document to you, Gina, and to Joshua for distribution to the committee, and also to Anna for distribution to the committee for their review. And at the next meeting, I would suggest that we try to be more succinct and try to get an answer to the church. But given that we've only had a week to look at it, I think we need a little bit of time to agitate. And I'm trying to provide a draft paper trail for people to cogitate against.
Okay, great, thank you. I'd like to suggest or ask the other members of the CPC that are on here, the ones that are absent tonight. I will, Josh or I will just send a note to them, but asking everybody to do the same thing that Carlton's doing. Look at the application. We have the 3-point list that Josh had sent out last month. And I believe the letter from Attorney Rollins mentioned them too. But to take their application, looking at the things that have been changed, specifically the letter from the lawyer and the budget narrative, to look at those, and each of us do that and form our thoughts. So it's not, and I mean, I trust Carlton completely on what he's writing, yeah. But as he said, it's his thoughts. I would like each member of the CPC and Anna, if I can ask for you to look at it too, and just our own individual thoughts, so we can put all our collective brains together. And as Carlton said, try to reach some resolution to it at the next meeting. And I want to thank the Central Square Congregational folks for their patience. It is a long process, and it probably seems longer after you're writing everything. But once we come up with that, and we go over what we think our individual thoughts, how it meets the anti-aid and the 3-point checklist, that we put all our thoughts together and come up with resolve. And Attorney Rollins is willing to talk to us, has made it clear that, you know, he will talk to us on our thoughts on that, you know, to give us his thoughts on our thoughts, if that makes sense. Okay.
You make a really good point, and I'm going to suggest that I not distribute my thoughts, but that each of us send to Anna our thoughts, and maybe she can, I think I have a model for how to talk about it, so maybe she could consolidate all of those into a working document for us, if that's appropriate. I think that's a good piece of work for her. She's got a good.
I agree. This right here, as I said, we're getting our individual thoughts, because we might not all be coming from the same place on it. Even though our intent's the same, we might be looking at it from a different angle. And sorry for my hand going, it's the Italian in me that the hands go. Anna, could we ask you to do that?
Yeah, that's fine. The other thing I was thinking about in relation to this is I'm not sure if the application materials that you guys have used have like a matrix like to evaluate applications. I know in a lot of communities, when we put together application materials, we put together basically like a matrix asking, like evaluating different applications on the criteria and sort of priorities that we've identified in the plan. And so I wonder if that it would be also useful in addition to, because I think there's two kind of questions. One, kind of the legality around the three-prong test, and that's one piece. And then I think there's also just still the conversation around the merits of the application itself. And I think we've had a lot of conversation around just the question around eligibility for the project, but not necessarily. And I want to also make sure that there's still room for conversation around that, just the application as an application as well.
Mm-hmm. As far as I know, there isn't or a checklist, which is a good point. I don't know if one existed like ages and ages ago. I don't recall one, but if you have a sample from another town that we could incorporate as a checklist,
yep,
that would be great.
I can do that and send that out later this week, if that would be helpful to everybody.
I concur. If you can put together a matrix for this application, that then we can model on future reviews. That would be great.
Yeah, that's no problem.
That's good.
When I send my piece to you, you might see some things to include or provide. Okay.
Great. Okay. I do have a question for some of the church folks that are still on here. The budget narrative, the first paragraph, it says about different grants that, like of course, the one I picked to say, I can't say, a Solace Trust for $150,000. I think that's great that you've added that piece in on what you've applied for, so it gives us some idea and knowledge that yes, you are applying for them. I was just wondering if you've heard back from any of them. Anybody from the church that can answer that? Gloria?
Barbara, you have to unmute your phone.
Yep. Okay, everybody from the church is muted.
Okay, now I'm unmuted. Okay.
Yep.
Hear you now.
Okay.
Don't see you, but hear.
Okay, can I just ask, because for you it just comes up and says iPhone. Can I just ask who's talking?
Barbara Maury?
Oh, Barbara. Okay.
Yeah.
It just comes up as iPhone.
She was on, but she wasn't muted. She was.
And then, oh, that's probably why.
Okay. Okay. Yep.
Yes,
Whoever
I can
wants to answer.
I will answer that. As you know, this was back in the month of December that we had this information, and we had applied before the end of 2019. And we did get an answer that all the money from that grant had already been issued. So we got nothing from that grant. We do have a grant writer on hold because, well, we have to pay him an hourly wage, which is, quite a bit. And so we're just waiting to hear what's going on with your committee. And he's ready to just plug right ahead and go for all the grants that he can possibly find for us. So at the time in December when we submitted the application, that was the only big grant that we really had applied for.
Okay, is that an annual?
It could be.
Right, but I guess annual for giving, but as far as they're concerned, do they start like January 1st, giving more grants?
Well, I'm going to jot that down and I'll check with him, and he can, once he starts going ahead and applying for multiple grants for us, he knows so much when it comes to what's out there. Yeah. He's done a really good job for us.
Okay. Great.
This kind of puts everybody in a conundrum, because one of the things we want to see is not just that you're applying, but you actually have received a grant.
Well, we want to see that too.
I know, but so there's a catch-22. Wait for us or wait for them.
Yeah.
I can't tell you what to do, but the more you can do early, the better it will be.
Right. And also, if those funds could be used, if per chance, and I can't say until we analyze the application if CPC is funding or in part or in the whole or what the outcome will be. But even if you did apply for those grants without knowing what CPC was doing, couldn't that, and you did say you did get $150,000, couldn't you put that towards fixing something that isn't that monetary, like $150,000 to fix?
Well,
So I guess, go ahead, Barbara, I'm sorry.
we're under the understanding, Gina, that whatever we get for grants, we hand over to the CPC.
Okay,
No,
that's if
no.
the CPC awards it. But if you get the grants ahead of time, like before we make a decision, and hopefully we don't take that long to make a decision, but say your grant writer applied for even the $25,000 grant, if you receive the grant before CPC pays out any money, then we just lessen what we've approved, if that makes sense.
May I clarify?
Okay.
Yep, go right ahead.
You're applying for grants that are independent of the town. The town would never, ever take a hold of those grants. We just need to know where else you're getting money from. So CPC is one grant, another Mass Historic would be another grant. There might be a third or 10 grants. All of those grants come to you so you can do your project.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So
Okay.
that's why you should move forward with grants.
Okay.
And in the grant applications, you would indicate that you have applied, don't use the $1.5 million thing, but you have applied for community preservation funds from the town of Ridgewater. But at this point, you don't know the amount. So the more you can get from them, the better off is it all around.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. There's enough members from my committee at this meeting tonight, so they've all heard it. And it's good to know. So I think we're just going to pick up the pieces and plug ahead again.
Yeah, don't wait for us to get the grant money, please.
Right.
I hope you have an answer in July for us.
I
think we will. I think we will.
Yeah,
I hope
hopefully. If not, it will be forthcoming. I can't believe July 1st is next week already.
Gina, I think in the agenda for the next meeting, we've gone through this enough that I think when we put this on there, there will be a vote.
Okay.
Required.
Okay. Yeah, we'll just set a deadline to maybe 2 weeks or yeah. And if we say 2 weeks for the CPC to get everything to you, does that give you sufficient time?
Yeah, I was going to suggest July 10th as the deadline.
Okay, July 10th.
And I was going to send out an email after the meeting to everybody.
Okay,
Missing members.
Okay.
I want to go back to the discussion of the matrices for just a moment.
Sure.
I don't think we can impose a matrix from another town onto an existing application without having first publicized that matrix and made the applicants aware that we're using these criteria. So I think we're going to have a special study to come up with our own matrix. We would want to look at matrices from a number of towns and see how they comport with the guidelines in our bylaws, as well as in Mass Historic and the other entities that inform our decisions. And then we would have to publish on our website, along with the application, what our matrix looks like in all fairness, because it would not be fair to impose a matrix onto an application that's already been filed. It's not equitable, I don't think. It's not fair, actually.
Yeah, I think that's a
If
great
that
point,
makes
Bill.
any sense.
No, I think that's a really good point that you raised.
Yeah.
But what alternative do you suggest for our review?
Well, we have some criteria of our own and some standards that we could that we could use. I mean, how do we do it? How have we done it with the applications in the past?
There was at one point,
How
I
we
remember
made
there was some kind of checkoff list or something that was in play,
Yeah.
but I'd have to dig into the records that I have.
Yeah, the only one that I can think of that would be is involved. Most of them are pretty straightforward. So the application is done right, or the application isn't done right, or it qualifies or it doesn't qualify. So everything is like a click. This one is, as we know, is a lot more involved. But the only other one I can think that would be even semi like this would be the Academy building. Carlton, can you just double check with, I don't know, the powers that be, if there was a checklist that was for that?
I will check with the town clerk and my wife.
Yeah, the power that be.
That's one individual.
The idea of a matrix is very good, but we're going to have to really work on that and wordsmith it and so forth and so on. And then we would have to publicize it so that people could be aware of these criteria when they submit their applications.
Right, and that's one of the things, that's a good point, Bill. That's one of the things when their application gets updated, that was on Anna's list for the administrative part, we could make a matrix as part of that application. So when somebody starts to do an application, they know this is the checklist that we use.
And that would protect us.
Idea.
A matrix would protect us if we turn down an application. We can point to the matrix and other documents that we have that informed our decision making.
Good point. Okay, so we can do that. Central Square, folks, you're helping us along with this too. You're helping us refine our process. I thank you for that. It's probably not, it's probably not making your night, but we do thank you for that. Because for some of these things, some of us are learning as we go too. Well, we have some new CPC members, so that's good. Any other questions or comments?
Comment on this. To Bill's point, Anna, when you start to look at the document, our application revisions, could you develop a draft matrix? But at the same time, could you distribute to the committee a couple of examples of what a matrix looks like? I don't want to reinvent the wheel, quite frankly. I'd like to steal from other people.
Right, and Stuart Saginaw for the State Community Preservation may have a boilerplate too that we can ask him about.
We have a bunch of examples we can pull from.
Okay,
good. The more the better, I think, in the long run.
Sorry, Bill.
Okay, good.
Because the matrix standards that are used in Wellesley might be very different from the ones used in I don't know, Hingham or any other town.
Right.
I don't know how many towns have CPAs that have been voted in. I mean, certainly it's not as many as we would like, but some of the neighboring towns, I don't think have CPAs.
Okay, I know
Voted.
Middleborough does, East Bridgewater does, and I think West Bridgewater does. I'm not positive about
Oh.
that. But there are, Anna and Jen Golson do work with another number of towns that they can
Middleborough
kind
has
of
one.
compare with what we do.
What was that?
Middleborough is also a CPC town,
Oh, that's
Yep.
good. That's good.
PA town.
Yeah.
East Bridgewater.
I know more and more have been coming on over
Okay.
the years, which is
Yeah, Gloria,
Right.
what was that?
East Bridgewater is CPC, has CPC. My genealogy group received a small grant.
Oh, when
some years ago.
did they? Because probably a year or so ago, they didn't, because there is a building next to the police station. There was like an old house. And they were talking about tearing it down. And I had seen something, I must have seen it on Facebook or whatever. And I just wrote and said about, because it was some historic building. And I said possibly CPC funds could help with it. And the response from somebody was that East Bridgewater doesn't have CPC, but maybe the meantime it was voted in. But that's good. That's good to know that, and that you got
I'll check on it. For
The
sure.
grant.
I know we received it, but I don't remember the number of years. It might be 3, it might be 5.
yeah. I wonder too if it's from a different town where it's Plymouth County genealogy.
Anna's asking to talk.
Anna?
Unmuted.
I
Yeah.
just wanted to go back to Bill's point around the sort of things that will go into the matrix. I
Mhm.
absolutely, Bill, you're right. I mean, it's not going to be the same criteria for every community. And what I would suggest is using the pillars that are already and priorities that are already identified in the plan that the CPC approved, and using
Right.
those as the way to evaluate the applications based on those values that you've already identified as important to
Yeah.
the CPC.
Mhm.
In the long run, it will make our deliberations perhaps easier. Let's hope so.
Right.
I was
Right.
trying to pull up the application, but my computer is kind of glitching to see if there is a matrix in the back. But if I manage to get it open, I can update everybody on that.
Good.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Sounds good. Any other questions or comments on the Central Square Congregational Church application? Okay. Anybody from the church? Gordon, did you have your hand up? Nope. Okay. Well, he's muted, but I see him shaking his head no. Okay, great. And again, I want to thank you folks for your patience in this. I know, as I said, it's been a long process, and hopefully it'll be resolved, and you'll have an answer in July. Okay, so I just want to thank you for all your help. Barbara, do you have anything that you want to add? Okay, you're muted. You have to unmute yourself. Or Josh, can you
There I am.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. Now in July, will the CPC be meeting with Attorney Rollins yourselves as your committee? And my question is, do you at any point want Attorney Rollins and Attorney Plante to meet at like a Zoom meeting like we're having tonight, like the meeting in July? Or do you think Attorney Rollins will meet privately with our attorney?
Good questions.
You can let me know.
Right. I did when as I said, I was sitting in communication today with Attorney Rollins. And my last thing to him, and we were writing, so we weren't, a phone conversation, was that once we as the CPC members put our thoughts how the application fits the 3-point test and the anti-aid part, that we may ask that he talked to Attorney, how do you say his name? Plante?
Well, I haven't heard him say it, but I was saying Plante. That's the way it's
Okay.
spelled.
Okay. Yeah, so I did write that to Attorney Rollins that we may request that he speak with your attorney too. Jason can't talk to the CPC. He can talk to us individually, but he can't talk to us as a whole committee unless it's at one of our posted meetings. Okay, Carlton,
Okay.
did you have?
My thinking is that I won't know what everybody else says until that meeting in July. But I anticipate that we should be able to make a decision then. That's my anticipation. My anticipation is also that we will not be providing the full amount requested, and it may be for very specific parts of your project. That's a discussion that the committee has to hold. If we may, as part of any award decision. Obviously, if it's a no, that's everything. But if it's a yes, then there's the question of how much yes do we give you, and what are the conditions. So I'm hoping we can resolve all that in July. My personal opinion is I think the CPC has a sufficient amount of information to make a decision. But at our last meeting, we said that we would receive we were willing to receive an updated application, which you had provided, and that we said that, I believe the minutes said that we would make the decision and consult with the town attorney at that point. So the town attorney has offered us to talk to each individual on the committee, and I believe that that's probably the appropriate thing to do before, and then we can know what his thinking is, and we can bring that together at the next meeting as part of the decision process.
Just I see that Kevin's here. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, Gina. Hi.
Good. What we're talking about, Kevin, just to catch you up on it, is we have the revised application that was sent out the other night. Josh sent it out. What we're requesting, we decided tonight, was to have every CPC member take that application, put it through that 3-point test that Josh had sent out last month. I believe what the 3-point test plus Jason in his letter that was sent out, Josh also sent out last month. And if anybody needs it again, we'll send it back out. But for each CPC member to look at the revised application, their letter from their attorney, put all that through that 3-point test and the anti-aid test, and submit it to Anna, and she'll consolidate all our thoughts. So Anna's going to send out an email recapping that, but that's what we're talking about now. And Jason Rollins has offered, as Carlton said, to speak to any member of the CPC individually that has a question. He can't talk to us as a group unless we post the meeting, but he is offering his services to talk to any CPC member that has questions on how it pertains or their thoughts. So we can include that. Anna, can you just include that when you send out your email to the committee?
Yeah, of course. And just 2 questions really quick. When Anna compiles all that, when everything's together with the letter of attorney, our thoughts, and the updated revision, where will Anna send that information?
She will distribute it to the CPC members.
Oh, so it's
either herself or through Josh. One of them will, or myself, but we will send it out.
Oh, okay, great.
Yep, we'll distribute it. Okay, other questions, sir?
Yeah, and just for the attorney, will the attorney reach out to us individually, or do we need to seek out the attorney to have a conversation?
You would have to call him if you have questions.
So our attorney will reach out to you individually. You don't call him, we'll tell him to call each of you.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's how we did it in the past. He would reach
Okay.
out to each individual.
Okay.
If he
Well,
doesn't reach out to you, you certainly are welcome to contact him. I think he should do the active solicitation.
okay. I can communicate with Jason just to be sure that's the way, and to get everybody's emails or phone numbers. If we don't have your phone numbers, I'm not sure. Josh, do we have? I don't think we have I don't know if we are. I can't say if we have everybody's phone number or not.
Yeah.
But
I think we
if
should. We should have it. I think we did that like about 5 months ago or something. We compiled everybody's.
I think so. I think so too. But okay, so I will communicate with Attorney Rollins how he wants to handle this and give him an update of what we're doing.
Sounds great.
Okay. Anything else on that?
I have one more question.
Sure.
Thank you, Gina. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gina, I have one more question.
Sure. Shoot.
So we will have an answer in July, and we're really
Fingers
excited
crossed,
about
hopefully. Fingers crossed, hopefully. We're not promising, but we're hoping to.
Okay, would you also have an award amount, dollar amount that you would be awarding? Or it would just be the answer, yes, that it was approved or not approved? Would we have those two answers?
No, we would approve for a specific amount.
Okay.
And we could also be specific, as we did with the memorial building. We said, okay, we will award X number of dollars, but we are very specific that it's used for the access. So say we don't award your whole 1.5 million, that we say, I don't know, some amount, and we say, for an example, not saying this is what it will be, even my thoughts, it's just the first thing that pops into my mind. We might say X number of dollars to repair the steeple, or X number of dollars, so we can be specific on it too.
Okay, that's good to know. When we revised our application and we did the budget narrative revision, it was suggested by one of our committee members that maybe we should include in there the amount that we've already spent towards this project. And that $63,000 was something that was necessary for to have architects come in and study the building itself. And so that was the only thing that we spent the money on was paperwork and architects in studying the safety of the building. And yeah, so, I mean, we would have to do that anyways after approval of the application, but I understand where money should not be approved before the application is actually awarded.
Right.
I can understand that part, yeah.
Right. The person that suggested to put that in was very good, because I know it was helpful for me to look to see what you've already spent.
That's always good practice. That's always good practice. By the way, we lost Anna from the computer. She is now the big phone symbol that's here.
Okay.
And I think it's incredibly helpful to have a, and I've said this in the past a bunch of times too, but I mean, just to have like a list of, what's the top priority, what's the second priority, third priority, because then, and then you can say, we've already spent X amount of dollars on number 1, number 2, number 3. That makes it, at least for me, that's how I would do it. But that would be incredibly helpful, just so we know kind of what the priority is, and then we can just, prioritize it accordingly, of course.
Okay. I think we might have that. I'd have to look back at the application. So
I think we do. Yeah.
Yep. Just looking at this budget narrative again, your application, the amount in the application for the 1.5, just rounded off in my head right now, would be decreased by the 74,479 because you've already paid that, correct?
Okay. Okay, that's understandable.
And be aware, I've been trying to learn a lot about what's eligible and not eligible under CPA. I need to check that again, but there may be certain activities that you've listed that are not eligible for funding. So I need to understand that better before next July.
Okay, this July. We don't want to prolong for next
It's
July.
next July for me. I'm still back in 19.
Got it. Okay. Okay.
Gina,
Any
can I
other-
ask one question? Oh,
Sure.
sorry. I just had a question on the budget items in the narrative and in the attorney's letter of opinion. He talked about that the funds were going to be used for the exterior improvements, but then on the budget narrative, there was a line item for interior finishes, and I just wanted to sort of ask about that piece. If you're still intending to ask for funding for that line item, or if that was just something that was left in there from a previous iteration.
The money that we're asking for is 100% for the exterior of the building. And if, like you just said, if there was something mentioned in the project narrative for inside the church building, that was an oversight. It shouldn't be there. We're only asking for the exterior envelope of the church.
Okay, it's right. I see here where it says that, right. Anna, good question, Anna. It says it's subtotal cost to perform all recommended repairs, and it gives the amount, and it talks about windows and carpentry and masonry. And then it says associated work and interior renovation.
Oh, well, I suppose we're asking for the exterior, the windows, and there has to be some internal work too when you do the windows. So yeah, that would have to be included with the windows.
Okay, but it's just, it's for the window part, it's not for, for other interior.
No. It would be for the windows, indoors if we did doors. Yeah, so that's a good point. Thank you.
Okay, good question, Anna.
Yeah.
Okay, anything?
I hate to keep singing this refrain, but I think it's important as kind of a reminder. Of course, the Congregational Church will have to file an application for a certificate of appropriateness for all of these changes and submit it to the Historic District Commission, at which time we will have a meeting and discuss the historical appropriateness of all of these specific renovations and of the exterior of the building.
Is that Bill speaking?
Yes, that's Bill Smith.
I think we've already filed that, Bill. The certificate of appropriateness.
Yeah, we haven't seen it.
Oh, I remember bringing that over to the office in the town hall myself. So I'm sure I have a copy of it. If you haven't seen it, I can go by and make. You can't go in though, can you?
Yeah, this COVID business has thrown a monkey wrench into all of our processes.
You could.
I could call.
I'm surprised we haven't been notified that. When did you file that, Barbara?
It would be in December when I handed the application in at the same time. That was completed also in December of 2019.
Was it?
We always get. Did you file it with the town clerk's office or submit it?
Yes, I did.
They always call me when an application has come in. So
certificate of appropriateness, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's filed.
An application for a certificate of appropriateness.
Yes.
Suggestion. Scan the page. Suggestion. Scan that page and resubmit it and copy Bill.
Okay. Okay, I will.
But there have to be a lot of attachments to that. I mean, we'll have to see the drawings of what's going to be done. Has all of that work been accomplished yet? The work that's been proposed?
It's
the
pretty-
architect, I mean, like
it's
what's
pretty
going to be done to
documented.
the windows?
Yes,
Pretty
it's
good
all-
in the application, Bill.
Yes, it's all
Sorry?
in the application.
Oh,
Is
okay.
it possible that that certificate was included in the actual application, the hard copy itself?
Yes, it is. It's in the application. I have the
Okay, so-
application. Yeah.
Okay, so
Um,
maybe it never made it to the town clerk. Unless
No,
you
because it
file
has
or-
to be stamped in, and then we are notified, and then we have a meeting, and we'll invite Barbara and the committee to come in, and the architects, if that's appropriate, to explain what's being proposed.
Okay, so that, I have a hard copy of the application in my hand, and the certificate of appropriateness is in it.
Okay. That,
And that's on,
perhaps that will suffice.
Okay, and our hard copy was given to Attorney Rollins.
Now, did
Okay.
does it have to have, like, did you mention a stamp on the town stamp on it, a seal?
Well, just when it's been submitted, they put a time stamp on it. That's, I mean, usually it's submitted separately from the application to CPC. So you might have to pull it out and submit it separately.
You know what, Bill?
Along with any, yeah.
I think I have the certificate of appropriateness in the application, and I believe I also hand submitted it to the town clerk's office. So I'll have to follow up on that tomorrow. I mean, can I
Okay.
call them?
Yeah, if you
yes.
call the town clerk's office, they're very good. You just leave a message. They're all working from home, but I've had great response from them. They get
Yeah.
back to me in like record time.
Okay.
Yeah, they do. They do.
It
It
doesn't
may
mean
be
that they'll,
slipped through the cracks somehow.
yeah,
Maybe
it
they
doesn't
did
mean,
not realize that there was an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the CPC application. They probably didn't realize that. That's why we were not contacted.
right,
Okay.
yeah.
So this should not be a lot of work for you, Barbara,
No, no, I have it right here, all filled
Yeah, we
out.
have-
given what you've done so far.
Mhm. Mhm.
Another question, now, when all this is, well, we're hoping so much, we're going on that we're going to be approved because we're so, we're just so hopeful of this. The next thing we have to do is a deed restriction. Correct?
Mhm.
So
Correct.
that's
I
what,
believe.
that's what we're going to work on next, the deed restriction. Okay, and I
Okay.
also have, yep, and that's in the application booklet that we originally worked out of.
Mhm.
Okay,
Anna, when is it appropriate for them to actually start the work for the deed restriction, now or later?
I would start working on it sooner than later because it takes a long time to get all the pieces together. There's a lot of research that goes into doing the deed restriction, which maybe I know that in some of the other meetings, past meetings that you've been to, we talked about this a little bit, and it sounded like some of that research had kind of been started. But I guess I would encourage you to start it earlier, sooner rather than later. And if you anticipate the CBC voting on it next month, it might make sense to start that work now.
okay, that's good to know. I mean, we've just been waiting to hear for an answer from you, and then we were just going to probably the very next day start working on this deed restriction. But it's encouraging to us, and I think we'll start working on that now before the July meeting in decision.
Yeah, because
Okay?
so just in terms of the timing, the CP, so if you wait till the CPC sort of votes on the funding, you'll have to wait until the deed restriction is till the preservation restriction is put on the deed in order to receive funding from the CPC.
Yes.
That's just
Yeah.
something that'll just add to the timeline. So just to kind of think about sequencing, if you started kind of earlier, it'll help kind of speed up the process a little bit on that end.
Well, I was thinking about really starting it a few months ago, but I thought it would be wrong to do this without having a decision made by your committee. And that's the only reason I didn't start pursuing this and going ahead and starting the deed restriction.
But just remember, the deed restriction is, as far as I know, is only required by the town because we would provide funding. I don't know that other organizations require deed restriction.
Yes.
Okay, is there a cost associated with getting a deed restriction?
Yes, usually there is a cost associated with it. Some of that cost goes to the research in gathering all this materials and then actually writing the deed restriction application and getting that on. And I think there's a fee that goes in association with putting the restriction on the deed, but I don't think that's a significant cost. I think most of the cost goes into the preparation of the deed restriction.
Okay, now the cost of that, or it's associated with the application, is that something, obviously, if it's being worked on now before we reach an agreement, I'm not sure if the cost of this deed application is written into the requested amount. If it is, and it's done beforehand, is that like comparable to a survey that we require so we can pay even if it's done before? I guess, does that question make sense?
It does to me.
You're concerned that if they start work on it now, it'll be it'll be not eligible for funding because they will have started the work on it already before
Right,
the CPC.
that's my question. Right.
Yeah.
Like the $63,000 cost, for example.
Right. Yeah. So usually in other communities, I've seen it that the CBC has approved funding that has included the deed restriction work as part of it. I don't know if the application includes that research in that.
Okay, I can't recall it either, if it did. But we can check that. Okay. That's all I have on that. Does anybody have anything else?
I guess the cost of the deed restriction, I mean, that can't be that much money. It would be like changing a deed on your house, wouldn't it be? And does anyone have a rough estimate what it would cost?
I think Bill just said about $3,000.
Oh, wow.
It requires a lot of stuff, like you have to have the meets and bounds meet. You have to make sure that that's in place. And then there's a lot of language about what the restriction is and the requirements of the restriction. So it's not just a simple deed.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, a meets and bounds survey is very expensive. Several thousand for sure, maybe 3 or 4.
I think I can find someone who can do it.
If my computer had not crashed, I do have an estimate. I have estimates in my emails from contractors that we've asked to provide estimates for how much work it would cost to do work on doing a deed restriction. And from what I remember, I think it's somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000, but don't quote me on that because I'm pulling that number kind of from nowhere. When I get my computer decides to rework, I can share that information with the committee.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay.
Why does that cost so much? I'm a little confused. Why is that filing for $3,000 to file? What's the big effort there?
Yeah, it's not just good. It's not just the filing of the deed. It's more around the preparation of the deed itself and tracing and doing the historical research that goes into placing the restriction on the deed itself. So a lot of it is to pay for someone's time to do the sort of background research to put together the deed restriction.
But the church has always been there, right? The church is, I mean, that hasn't been a big convoluted history to the church.
You'd be surprised. about
Right,
some-
right. They
Give you an
still have,
example.
yeah.
When we did the
Yeah.
restriction for the Unitarian, they could not get the meets and bounds to agree. And they had to go through an awful lot of work with the consultant to get that appropriate and corrected.
Mhm.
Let's hope that isn't part of this church parcel.
Because these properties are so old, it
Mhm.
does become convoluted, unfortunately.
Oh, because
Legally.
because of the age of the building, kind of thing.
And it depends too on if the boundaries are not clear. I remember the case Carlton saying for the Unitarian Church, it got, the deed research got down to, I think that one of the cornerstones was part of a stone wall that wasn't there anymore. So it gets
That
into
kind of
like a
thing.
lot of that too.
Oh, brother. Oh my God. That's a big thing.
They have to go back to the history and trace the deeds to ensure that in fact the church has the deed. That kind of research costs money because you have to dig into a lot of old records.
Exactly.
Right.
That's crazy. That's crazy to me. Wow.
The law.
Okay. I had no idea. I just
You're in
learned
the wrong profession, Kevin. You need to
something.
switch professions.
Yeah, pay me the $3,000. I'll go out there and I'll make sure it's done.
I have another meeting at 8 o'clock, just as a heads up.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're almost done. Okay, anything else for the church?
Well, we did include the the copy of the deed right up front of our application. And it has this, it's a true copy from the House of Registry of Deeds.
That's a good starting point.
Okay, that's good. Very good. I
It
told
was
you.
nice. It was nicely handwritten.
Yes, I
Beautifully.
saw that. Yep,
I said, wow.
yep. I was looking, saying, what does it say here?
So we've really got all the research all done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so maybe it won't cost that much.
I hope you're that lucky. I hope you're that lucky.
Yeah. Okay, well, if there's nothing else on that, I do want to thank you. And as we said, well, you know what our thought process is on how we're handling it and going forward. So, okay, we will be in touch and see you in July, which will be whatever the fourth Wednesday is. I don't have a calendar right here, but okay. I want to thank you for your participation tonight and for all your work done. It's much appreciated.
Hopefully we'll have an answer for you soon in July for the final
Yep.
note.
I hope so. Okay, moving on. Old business, the Barstow House. James, you're on.
Yeah, thanks, Gina. Thanks, committee, too, for having me back. So I had a quick update on some of the conversations I'd had based on our last call. So just to kind of refresh everyone's memory, and for anyone who wasn't on the call last time, so this is a property over on the south side of Pleasant Street, right opposite where Union Street terminates. It's a beautiful old house built in the 1850s for Edwin Barstow, who was a sea captain and sailed a ship named after Bridgewater. Beautiful house. At the time, it had greenhouses and had all sorts of different stuff in the back. And people would travel along the trolley on Pleasant Street to come visit it and see the grounds and all that. So if you haven't checked it out, it's a beautiful house. They have a lot of the old features, the Victorian features like the driveway, granite posts, all that are still there in the front. So the last time we met, we had a discussion about that, and the kind of the next step, the outcome was to get in touch with the owners. So in the time since that last meeting, I had a really, really great conversation with the realtor, who's a friend of the owners and representing the property. So I got some information there. The property now, over the course of decades has included more than just the Barstow house. So there's also the old Conant and Leach house next to it, as well as two more modern houses, one on Pleasant Street and one on May Jim Lane. And then there's about 8 acres of unspoiled wilderness kind of in the back, if you call it wilderness in town. So the idea, they've been trying to bundle that together and sell it on a per unit basis. So of course, that means instead of dividing it as a typical housing subdivision, it would actually be broken into individual units which would be sold out. The 2 options for that would either be a housing, like a 40B housing development with units, but the town has saturated its need for those, or an assisted living complex. So that was the strategy they were pursuing to kind of maximize the value of that property. So that's been going on for about 4 years. A few different deals have fallen through. And of course now, unfortunately, given what COVID has done to not only commercial real estate, but to the assisted living and kind of nursing home industry, the representatives behind that are looking for new opportunities. So I've been working a little bit on the side to figure out, are there any other opportunities that are a little bit more creative, where the owners could still get the value they're looking for out of that property, but we'd be able to preserve perhaps one or even both of those historic homes. So that's where we are now. Hoping by next time I'll have a few more details about what some of those opportunities might be, and any other conversations with the owner or the realtor. So I'm sorry, I'm a little short following. I know it was a kind of a more interesting conversation before, but I'm happy to answer any questions or otherwise turn the floor back, give the time back.
You're muted, Gina.
Okay, Carlton, go ahead.
No, I just was saying you're muted. I heard you. I saw your lips moving.
I forgot I muted it for the last train. I never realized how many trains go by. And then there were the motorcycles going by. So, but I want to thank you, James, for the update and for your, your interest in that and preserving the property. I think that's great. I appreciate it. Does anybody have any questions or comments for James?
Gina, I did send, I think, to you a primitive photograph of the historical description of the house that was prepared in the 80s by an architectural historian in Boston who surveyed several hundred properties in the town of Bridgewater in preparation for the establishment of the historic district. It's a fairly well detailed architectural description of the house, so we might want to pass that around to members of the committee if they're interested in architectural detail.
Okay. I'm just looking back. I just found that you sent to me.
Yes, I'm sorry it was in the form of
to
a photo. I'm not very good at scanning things. I had mentioned to Gina, I think in an email, that I wish we had this entire historical survey of buildings in Bridgewater digitized so that people in the community would have access to it. Now we only have paper copies. I have one as the HDC chair. There may be another copy or so around, and we have one in the historical room of the library. But of course, it is inconvenient to have to go searching for these paper copies. But it's an indispensable volume, particularly when we're doing research. But maybe I could approach the town manager about having it digitized and made available on either our website or the HDC website or a town website.
Is this document, is the document you're talking about different from the historic cultural resources database, the MACRIS? I don't know if you're familiar with that.
I'm not sure. I think it probably is. To my knowledge, this has
Okay.
never been digitized.
Okay. Yeah, because I know that we have the there's like the digitized version of all the historic cultural resources in our town, and there's even some websites that have like where they're all mapped. But I would be very interested in seeing this document.
Yeah, it's
Okay,
it's several hundred pages long. Several hundred pages long. I mean, the description of the Barstow house was just 2 pages, single spaced, but it was still very, very specific. It gave information about the sea captain and a very detailed architectural description of it's an Italianate house in the 19th century Italianate style. And we don't have many Italianate houses in Bridgewater. It was considered very grand in its day. As who was that who talked about that? Was that James?
Yes, that was.
No, that was Steve Rogan.
Oh, sorry.
No,
That was
before
Steve,
that.
but there was
Before that.
James.
James. Is he a member of the CPC?
No.
He's
No.
not.
Oh,
He's
okay.
just an interested guest with us.
Oh, okay.
And I was visualizing him as being an old graybeard, but I'm glad to see you.
Actually,
Well, I'll take it as a compliment. Thank you. I'll take it as a maturity.
I just learned this either at the last meeting or right after. I mentioned to James, I asked about his mother, but his uncle is Roddy Walsh.
Oh,
Whoa,
good. Yeah.
hey now.
Right.
We all know him.
Right. And James lives in the house next to Roddy. That was actually, where Cap Walsh lived, James's grandfather. Yep. So that's where James is. And James' family has a long history with Bridgewater.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Gina. Thanks.
Well, I'm glad you're taking interest in it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's important that I say I'm glad you're taking an interest in the house.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and you know, I'm not sure if I'm referring to the same resource that you are, but I had randomly come upon some of the Massachusetts Historical Commission reports, and as you said, it's like this treasure trove of information, you know, and it was so difficult to kind of access that. So I did just kind of a personal project. I made a website where it's actually mapped out to Google Maps, because you know, even just talking to neighbors, you know, people are so interested by it, but it's hard for them to find. I'd be happy to share that out if that's like a starting point or something that, you know, the town.
I mean, this needs to be readily available. I mean, a lot of people live in historic houses and they don't know the history of their own house that they live in. And this documents several hundred historical properties in town.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You know that there's 351 properties listed in the MACRAS for Bridgewater, historic properties.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a great discussion. I'm looking at the time. I hate to interrupt on that. I know that Carlton needs to get off.
We need to move on, I'm sure.
Right.
Has to leave us too.
But I just want to thank James and Bill and Steve for their input. And I will send out, I just pulled up the things that Bill had sent me on the Barstow House, the history of it. And I'll just ship that. I'll send it out to James and to the rest of the committee just for the
and James, see if that is the same document that you pulled up from your database.
Absolutely. Thank you, Bill. And thank you, Gina. Thank you for the time.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. As I said, I hate to cut you short. Alden House. I think Anna had an update on that. And that should be the last thing we have, I think.
Yeah, the only update, so we met with the family last month after our meeting and had with members from Historic New England who talked about their program, and there was both sons and daughter-in-law and the owner of the house. And after that meeting, Jen sent some follow-up information around if they wanted to follow through with things and sent some resources. But since then, we haven't heard anything back from them.
Where is the Alden House? Is that on High Street?
It's on High Street, yes. It's real close.
Beside Judy Gabriel's.
Yes.
Next
yes,
door
right,
to Judy. Yeah, I know where it is.
Right.
Yes,
And they
that's
also
a
own
very
the property.
significant house.
Right. They own the property across the street too.
Yeah.
It sounds like I was in on that call, and the owner of the house describing the house right up until the renovations that were done, not all that long ago. It was a very primitive house. It sounds so interesting.
Yes, I've heard it was very primitive. Judy Gabriel
Yes.
has talked about it quite a bit. Yeah.
Right. Good.
A very significant house in town.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So they were interested too, and I hope I'm saying the group right, but just preserve the property, the open space property as well.
Right. They were interested in putting a conservation restriction on it, and we provided some contact for them to reach out to around if they were interested in doing conservation restriction for the open space portion of the land.
And I believe they were also looking for a trust, or they were going to do a trust with that property as well.
Yeah, I think the trust, though, it has to do with their, they were talking about a family trust for the property. Not necessarily, I don't think they were anything to do with the town. I think it has to do with their family trust.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that rings a bell, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, Anna, for the update. Any questions or comments on Alden House? Okay, moving on. We're going to have you off in time. New business? Any new business?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say one kind of postscript on the Alden House. What are the next steps? I mean, is somebody following this up, and are we pursuing this as a possible project application, or what are the next steps with the Alden House?
Okay, we can't do anything basically for the house itself because the same instance as the Keith Homestead, the CPC doesn't provide for upkeep. If the town bought the house or did anything, they couldn't, which the town just doesn't have the budget to upkeep something like that. So basically we as CPC can't fund anything for the house as far as the town buying it.
The next step is up to the owner. The next step is up to the owner. If they want to apply for CPA money from the town, they'll have to go through our application process.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it sounded like they had a lot of things to weigh, and they were not sure what the next steps are just internally in terms of what they as a family want to do with the house, whether it's keeping it in the family, whether it's placing a preservation restriction or conservation restriction on the open space portion, or if it's selling the house. I think they, as a family, have to decide what they want to do with it, and if part of their sort of legacy planning involves the CPC, we also left the door open that if they had further questions that either about the preservation restriction or conservation restriction, to reach out to Jen and I or to Historic New England, which we put them in contact with. So I think, to Carlton's point succinctly, there isn't really anything for the CPC to do unless the owners are interested in placing one of their either or both of the restrictions on the property.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
No new business.
Steve.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to mention, like, and this I don't know. It doesn't really fall into either new business or it could potentially be new business for something in the future. but I just want to let everyone know that I've been into talks with Bridgewater, England. Recently I posted a letter that was from Bridgewater, England to Bridgewater, Massachusetts about the anti-slavery petition back in 1846 and 1847. And just in the past 2 weeks, I've already been interviewed by BBC Radio twice because I shared the petition with the town of Bridgewater, England on their Facebook page, and it's become very popular. The town of Bridgewater, England wants to become a twin city with Bridgewater.
We've already done that. We did that 30 years ago. We had a big celebration around that. So yes, it was very exciting. A guy came over from England, and we had a red carpet. They literally rolled out a red carpet for him. That was probably in the early 90s.
Okay.
And we officially became a sister town with Bridgewater, England. So it would be a matter of renewing that relationship.
Good to know.
Historical archives, we should be able to find it. I've actually been to Bridgewater, England. It's not very pretty.
Bill,
it's probably pretty rainy, I imagine. It's probably
a very important connection to have. I think it's a great opportunity. We need to renew this. I'm sure the man who came over has passed away. His name was Glenn Court, and Bridgewater, England's in Somerset, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Somerset County in England.
Yep.
Yes,
Bill, do you have any documentation anywhere? Maybe the Enterprise carried an article. There must be something out there that we can dig into deeper. I don't know if the town board should have it. The annual reports might have something, Steve.
Right.
Yes,
if you
surely they would.
I never heard of that before with the sister city.
He stayed at our house. He stayed at our house because he didn't have a place to stay. So he and his wife, Claire Court, and Glenn Court stayed at our house, and it was a wonderful occasion.
Excellent.
I can't remember the name of the town manager who helped to arrange this. Do you remember the English woman who worked in the town hall?
Patty Canepa?
What's that?
Patty Canepa?
Yes, it was the Canepas were behind this, and he was the town manager or the equivalent of the town manager. She was from England, and it happened during his tenure in the town as town manager. If that gives you, that was in the 90s, wasn't it? I think, Gina, wasn't it?
If you have anything on that, I think it's great that Steve is working and has made the connection with Bridgewater, England. I have to admit, I haven't listened to your recordings yet, but it's on my to-do list on one of these days.
Quite all right.
But I think it's great, the connection. I think it's great too that they did our peaceful protest the same time that we did.
It's very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah. So surely the town has some record of this. I mean, it was like one of the first times. We literally rolled out a red carpet. It was a big deal.
Carlton.
Bye,
Must have
Carlton.
been a big quiet
Carlton.
celebration because I don't remember any of it.
I don't remember the celebration, but I do remember the sister city thing. So, Bill, if you have any information on that you could share with Steve.
I don't.
That would be great.
I'm sure I don't. I can reconstruct something. Surely there's. I mean, there were citations and documents, and there was a formal presentation. The town surely would have records of that.
Right. I can try to reach out to. I think the Canepas are still in Bridgewater. I know they go to Florida for the winter, but I think they're still up here for the summer months. I can.
They would know. He would know all about it. It just might make Stephen's work a little bit easier, and would make it more interesting that we've done it before, and that we're renewing it and so forth.
Exactly.
Because
Yeah. No, that.
They did send a representative here.
Okay, I will.
And,
Yeah, I will reach out to the cannabis too and see if I can.
that's a great. I
If
didn't
I can
realize they were
find
still
any.
around.
Great. Thank you.
Yes,
That would be great.
I believe they still are. As they said, they go out of state for the winter, but I believe they do come back. And I may just have an email for Patty too from years ago, being on a committee with her. So I'll.
Yeah, the gentleman who came was named Glenn Port.
Port,
like when all this was happening, I thought he was much older than I was, so I'm sure he's passed away.
Okay. Hopefully that gives me something to look at in like newspapers or anything.
Yep.
We can find it, I'm sure, in newspapers.
Yes.
Yeah. We can look back and. Okay, great.
I've never heard of that partnership between Bridgewater, England, and like I don't think it's well known that people know that at all.
Gina, the cannabis
it must not be.
What was that about the cannabis?
They are back. I see them at the transfer station every week.
Okay.
And I remember the sister town thing.
Okay. Can you, if you see them, can you just ask them if they have any information to get it either to you and you can pass it on, or to me?
Okay, I will.
Okay. Sounds great. Thanks, Terry.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other new business, I do want to say to thank the CPC members, because this is the first time in I don't know how many months that we have a full committee here. We have everybody here, jumping on it at various times, but we do have a full committee. So I do thank everybody for coming to the meeting tonight.
You're welcome, Gina.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Gina. We should be thanking you because you do the heavy lifting.
Well, not
Exactly.
really. I think
Exactly. Thank you, Gina.
Anna and Carlton keep me in line. But I think that's it. If nobody has anything else to add.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, just a recap for real quick for the members that jumped in late and may have missed it. We had a lengthy conversation about the Central Square Congregational Church application. What we are asking the CPC members is to take that revised application, put it up against the 3-point test to see if it qualifies for CPC funds. Write out your thought. Anna's going to recap this, but just so you know it's coming. Put your thoughts down. Attorney Rollins, the town attorney, has offered to speak to any member of the CPC individually to, to go over their thoughts on it. But so you will be getting that, and we have a July 10th deadline to get it back to Anna to compile everybody's thoughts. So I appreciate if everybody will take care of that, because we all have great minds with great thoughts, and we might pick up something somebody else doesn't pick up. So if people can do that, but I do want to thank everybody for the full committee being here, and for Anna as well. So if there's nothing else, we can call it adjourned at 8:05.
Okay.
Just one word to Stephen.
Yes.
David Moore may be a good resource for the celebration. He may remember this. You know him well, of course.
Yeah, I have been talking with him. He didn't bring it up, but I'll pick his brain again.
Yeah, it was a big deal.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. Everybody have a wonderful night, and we'll see you next month.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Have a good night.
Okay.